Hey, it's Joe Farrow with Geek Toolkit, and today we're going to do some basic logic in Home Assistant using Node-RED. What I mean by that is sometimes when you walk in and you hit a light switch on a room, for instance, I want to turn this light on, I want other things in the room to turn on, for instance, other lights, or maybe I have Raspberry Pis tied to these monitors, and I want those to turn on also. So this is what this will look like. When I turn on this light, normally using a light switch, I'm simulating it here, you see that light turned on, and what you'll see happen is both of these monitors will turn on as well. There they go. They're booting the Raspberry Pi project that I call DynaFrame. And I've got a video for that. Basically, these will become posters of games or videos or whatever artwork I want to show on them. Now, the nice thing about this is my LED strips under my computers can turn on, my TV can turn on. I can turn on a number of things when my lights turn on. This same logic is similar to what you would do if you were going to say use a motion sensor to turn on a light. To do all this though, we use a thing called Node-RED, which gives us a very visual representation of the logic. This is what we're going to end up building, where this here is listening for the state of the light, and if it's on, it calls out and turns on the DynaFrames, and then it sends a debug message, and if it's off, it turns off the DynaFrames. So one more quick demo, we'll show you what that looks like. If I turn off, let's see, this computer's on. If I turn off the back left light, that light turned off and that frame turns off instantly. I'm not recommending you do this to your Raspberry Pis, even if they're USB booted. I'll work on a better way of doing this, but for the sake of this tutorial, this will show you a number of things. So before we get here, the first thing we have to do is actually install this. So we're going to go to, let's see here, we'll just do it like this. Here we go. So this is our overview page. And if we go down to HassIO, this shows what's installed. You're going to want to click on the add-on store. The official add-ons are at the top. Scroll down to the community add-ons, find Node-RED, and then this will be the install button. Go ahead and click install. If you followed the 2U tutorial, you know how to use the ! secret to talk to your secrets file to hide your passwords and usernames. You're going to want to put down these 5 things. You're going to want to have a secret stored for your credential secret, which is used for, I believe, encryption. You're going to want your username and passwords filled out. I turned SSL off because I don't have a certificate, and also because I'm only using this on my local network. If you have this on and you don't have a certificate, this will error when you start it up. Make sure you use a username and password for both static and node. And then when you're done, hit save. On your first install, I recommend rebooting the Raspberry Pi to have everything come up correctly. And then you'll want to go down here and hit refresh after you've started it. If you don't know how to start it, the start button will be right here. Make sure that you look through here and make sure that everything started correctly. If your password is leaked, or if your password is in the I have been owned database, it will block this add-on. That's one of the things this add-on does every time it starts, so keep an eye out for that. I recommend clicking on the show in sidebar here, which will put it an entry over here for Node-RED, and that makes it very easy to get to. Then you click on Node-RED, and if everything's up and working, you should see this view here, minus these. Okay, so basic terminology here. The things over here are called nodes. To get them on the page, you can just click and drag them. The blue circles mean that they're not saved. If they're not saved, they're not running. To get them to save and run, you hit deploy. To connect them, you click and drag. This is an output. Click it over to this input, and that's called a wire. So node wire, it sends a message that has it sends a payload. No, it does. It sends a message that has a payload, and that goes over to here. So that's just terminology. It's not something that you have to know just yet, but when I start saying these words, you'll know what I'm referring to. Okay. These nodes here at the top are the Home Assistant ones. They're specific, but all of these other ones are what's just part of this Node-RED, this graphical logic setup. And what's cool is there's plugins that you can get. There's more nodes that you can get. There's some really cool things. Here's Twitter, email, and such. So there's very, very powerful things here that you can use. And you can even use Python and JavaScript even to do your logic between these. Very basically, the way this works is something here will generate data. It'll send it over a wire. This will receive the data, and then we'll do something on it based on what logic has happened. For timestamp, this actually just sends the time across. That's what the payload of this is just the current time. The debug one will actually talk to the debug window, which is this bug right here. If you click on this bug, this is the debug window. The deploy button lights up red when the things are not saved. So if you see a blue dot or a deploy and you're trying to get stuff working, you want to hit this deploy button here. When you hit deploy, you'll get any errors off this dialog. If not, you'll see a green button there. And then if I click here on the inject button, it actually sends the time over and it comes up in the payload. This is the number of seconds since 1970. This is just a common way of talking about time. If I click on it though, I can see it for the current date time in the UTC time zone. This tab is called a flow. And you can have multiple flows, and this allows you to organize things. I could have a lighting flow, a security flow, a heating flow, and so on. Just click a plus button over here to add a new flow. Double click to rename it. Click done. And then if you double click on it and hit delete, you can make it go away. If you hit control and scroll wheel, you'll zoom in and out the entire page because you're in a browser. So if you want to actually zoom in and out, I recommend using these buttons down here. And that gets very useful when your flows get really big and complicated. You can export flows and save them. Let's see here, export, and they export as JSON. So if you copy this and send it to somebody else and they import it, then they can use your flow logic. You can also find flows that way, where you basically import a flow and paste JSON and you'll see the logic. It's great to look at other flows to figure out some tricks on this and really learn it. It's one of the ways I've learned a lot of things. Let's talk about how to actually talk to Home Assistant. The event state here is one of the nodes I use the most. And when you drag it over, you get the blue dot, but you also get a red triangle. The red triangle means that this flow has not been configured. If I double click on it, you're going to want to make sure a server says Home Assistant. I'm going to say, call it just light on. Say, oh, I'll call it is light on. There we go. And I'm going to want to click this edit button here. The first time you do this, make sure that this is Home Assistant. I use HassIO. That's checked. I'm going to click update. And now it's asking me for an entity ID. The entity ID is the device that I want to know the state of. On my overview page here, if I click on any device, so for instance, we're going to use the back left, the Makerspace back left light, and I click settings, the entity ID shows up here. So I can copy it here if I don't know it. I can also, if you type, let's see, it's a light, so I'm going to type light dot, and I want to do the back left light. So you can also auto-complete it. What I'm going to say is if that state is on, then this should fire. Is light on. So I renamed it, so it's named, the triangle went away because it's configured, but it's not saved. I'm going to hit Control C and Control V. That's how you copy nodes. You can also copy a number of nodes to a different flow. So I can do stuff like that. So I've copied 4 nodes to a new flow here. Just want to show that it's really handy for, again, for organization. Because the state can be true or false, I have 2 dots here. The top one is if the state is true. So if the light is on, then this will fire. And I'm going to connect that out to this debug. We'll get rid of these. I'm going to highlight and delete them. I've got blue dots, so I'm going to hit deploy to get that deployed out. See this red where it says disconnected? This means that this hadn't connected to Home Assistant yet. Now it connected, and it sent the payload, and it shows that that light is off right now. If I go to Home Assistant, let's see if I can do this in a way I can show both of them. Let's see here. Excuse my mess as there we go. Let's see if this works. And I'm going to switch that light on. And there you go. So the payload of on came across. This turned green, it shows the lights on. By the way, I'm going to delete these lines just to turn this off because I just heard the that flow was running as well. Okay, so now you know how to listen for a device's state changing. You know how to look into the Home Assistant page to find out the entity ID, and you know how to output things when they happen. What we need to know now is how do we actually call a service? And what that means is that's how we activate something. The thing I want to activate is this switch right here. My Raspberry Pis are plugged in on either side of this Z-Wave switch, and that Z-Wave switch is this Dynaframe switch right here. That Dynaframe switch is connected on either side to these Raspberry Pis. That's how that all works together. So what we'll do is we're going to bring in a call service here. And you see the red triangle, it wants to be set up. So we're going to say turn on Dynaframe. And Home Assistant, the domain, this is a switch. So the domain is what type of device is this? It's a switch. We're going to turn it on. You see that the services were toggle, turn on, turn off. Entity ID is going to be start with switch dot. It's this one right here. And I can click done. And so if the light's on, I can drag that right in the middle. It'll connect the wires for me. The light's on, then turn the Dynaframe on, and we'll output a message, a debug message here. Now I'm going to copy and paste this and say if the light is not on, connect that up. We're going to say turn off Dynaframe. We'll change this to turn off. Same switch, click done. And then we can actually reconnect back up to here. We don't have to do a separate debug thing. Now, one thing I want to show you is if you double click on this and you go to, let's see, this third piece, or here it is, node status. On the first tab, the node status, it says you get 32 characters. If you click OK on that, what will happen is you see how it's green, it says on. This is a node status under the node. This will show up under the debug, which means that we won't have to necessarily look for it over here. We've got blue dots all over the place, so let's deploy this. Let's make sure that this one doesn't run at all. This is okay, so this connected. This connected, these are wired up. Let's give this a try. So we're going to, let's see, I'm going to actually try to see if I can show both of these here. There we go. So in Home Assistant, we're going to flip over the, I think it was the back left light. You see that light turned off and then that monitor turned off and I heard the switch click. And if I turn on that back left light, the light turns on and these should start booting in a second. There you go. Okay, I want to show you one more thing because I think as powerful as that is, there's one other thing that you should know about, and that is the data that you can pass for these call services. When, let's see, this is a light switch. Let's do one where when the back left light is on, it turns on the, let's see, can I see the back right light? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so both the lights are off now. We're going to turn on, when the back left light is turned on, we're going to turn on the back right light. So if you've been following along, you should kind of get the idea here. We're going to, I'm actually going to copy this part because that state's already there of is the light on. I'm going to rename it just so it's a little bit easier. So this is the back left light. We're going to call a service to turn the other light on. And we're going to say if that's true, turn this light on. This will connect these two lights, so if one's turned on, the other one turns on also. Now we're going to say turn on. This is the reason I'm doing this. When you choose a domain, and we'll do light.back, back right. There we go. When you choose a light, these are super important, these properties, because this is how you set a setting, like if you want a light to change colors or something. If you have an entity of a light, the only options that you have for the service is turn on and off. Everything else gets passed as data, and it gets passed in a JSON format. You can click on these dots here, and then JSON's always in brackets, and then the words are going to be in parentheses, or I'm sorry, in quotes. And they're going to be separated by a colon. Let's get the mouse out of the way. If I click on Visual Editor, this will let me know if I'm doing this correctly or not. And this all looks good. Okay. Actually, I don't think I need this in quotes because it's going to be a numeric value. Let's see here. And what I'm doing here is I'm saying set the brightness to about half so that it doesn't turn the light all the way on. Not because it's an interesting demo, but just because it shows you how to pass data like colors or brightness, or do things like turn the brightness on and off. I'll hit done. We're going to hit deploy. And when I hit the back left light on, we should see the back right light turn on. So let's go to Home Assistant. Back left, I flip that on. There goes the left one. The right one turned on automatically. Now keep in mind, I had another flow going on here that said if that light turned on, to turn on the dynaframes. So these chained, and the dynaframes are starting to turn on, and you'll see these boot up as well. This is important to note. If you have things across multiple tabs, they all happen at the same time. And if you have something happening, it may affect other tabs. So just keep that in mind. Okay, with that, you should be able to turn lights on and off, change their colors, set their brightnesses, and the switches and lights basically translate to almost any device as far as figuring out if it's on or off or what it's set to, and calling other values. The rest of these nodes could probably take a video each. There are some that are very complex, some are simple but very powerful. And we haven't gotten into things like the switch one, which is very, very powerful. You can do like 4 or 5 different things. This is how you do things like scenes. You know, if I have this scene, I want to have these things happen, you can use a switch for that. Yeah, so there's a lot to Node-RED. My goal was to show you how to install it and get up and running with it. And basically, once I got to here, I've been tinkering around with it ever since. It's a ton of fun. It's very easy to do visual logic like this. I highly recommend using the debug nodes to help out with things. I didn't intend to become a home automation channel, and so I'll probably get back into 3D printing here soon. But if there is other stuff on home automation outside of the Lovelace configurator, let me know, and I'll try to get videos up on those. I'm still working on rebuilding my entire home automation system after I lost it to a corrupted SD card. So I want to thank you for watching. I hope that was useful. Let me know if that's too fast, too slow. If that helped you out, I really appreciate it. If you give it a thumbs up, then I know that these videos are what people are liking. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit that subscribe button. Thanks a lot. Have a good day. And I'm Joe Farrar with Geek Toolkit.